safekidsnow.com. As a crime and violence prevention consultant, I'm always shocked at how abused children can be, and this is a horrendous story about child sex trafficking. The average age the children are lured into sex trafficking is age 13. Now, these are children that are vulnerable. They may have run away. They have been abused at home. Maybe they've come out of foster care where they were also abused. Now, these children, it's estimated that there are between 100,000 and 300,000 young people on our streets that are being pimped into sex trafficking. I am so pleased today to have the opportunity to talk to Sheila Warren and Mattie Johnson. And the way we were connected had to do with Regina Contreras. And she was so enthusiastic about what you're doing. I know you're in East Oakland, California, and you work with women, and it's called Street Disciples. So I am very anxious to find out all about Street Disciples and what your roles are and how you got involved. So why don't we start with you first? Tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved.
Street Disciples developed from this church and something that the pastor had a passion for, women who were being trafficked and young girls, especially caught in sex trafficking. So he approached one of his ministers, Reverend Harry Williams, to start an organization that would address the issues that these women and girls are dealing with. So Reverend Williams, last December, he stepped down, so Mattie and I became co-leaders of this. My passion for this stems from a family member being molested and raped by her father from a very young age, and she eventually medicated herself till she died because of the not having to deal with and being able to cope with the reality of being raped by her father. So there are hundreds of young women out in the streets of Oakland under 18 who are being trafficked and abused in this way. So,
and you say hundreds of young girls. What age group are we talking about?
We're talking about between 11 and 17. Every night.
Every night. Do they not have any homes or parents or what?
Most are runaways.
Runaways from someplace else.
East Oakland and other areas too. Sometimes they're brought here, but a lot of them are from foster care and just abusive, very, very violent homes. And they run away in between 24 and 48 hours. They're caught up by predators or pimps, as people usually call them, but that's what they're caught up in and being brutalized. They're coming from group homes, foster care, and very, very violent homes themselves, where the parents are maybe drug addicts or dysfunctional themselves.
Okay. Now, Mattie, this is Mattie Johnson.
Yes.
And Mattie, tell us, how did you get involved with the Street Disciples here in East Oakland?
Reverend Williams that Sheila referred to had Noah Brantley, who is over the Misty organization here in the city of Oakland, had her to come to our church and speak. She's actually a survivor of street trafficking herself. And so when she spoke and talked about her organization and the work that they were doing with girls and young women, it just touched my heart. Missy provides counseling. I don't believe they provide housing, but girls who are being trafficked, sexually trafficked, can come into their organization and find help, find support to get out of it. And so that's essentially what they do. They help them transition out, or they help them to know that there's a safe place for them to come. They don't provide housing. And so that's basically what their organization is.
Do you know how big a problem this is in East Oakland? Numbers?
Well, we've heard at least 100 girls per evening.
Now, tell us about sex trafficking, because a lot of people have heard the word, they don't know what that means.
Well, sex trafficking is a form of slavery, where these young girls are coerced by predators. We call them pimps. The common term is pimps, but we call them predators because they entice them, they coerce them, their girls are scared, or they are lured into it because, as she was saying, they may come from a home where they have not been loved and nurtured, or they may have run away from that type of home as well. And so they're looking for someone who seems to care. And so these predators, they're easy targets. So these predators know that. And so, and because they're young, they can say, well, let's go and get something to eat. Oh, are you okay? Let's go get something to eat, take us to McDonald's. Not even anything that's really nice, you know, a nice place to eat, but just something. And they're sweet to them, and because they're so hungry, rooming. Yeah. And because they're so hungry for that, before they know it, you know, I'm really having a hard time, and I need you to do something for me. You know, I've been taking care of you, and I really need your help. And before they know it, they are caught in something.
Okay. All right, and our conversation with you, Mattie, thank you so much for sharing that information. Sheila Warren is here with us, too. And Sheila, tell us, what do you think is going on here? The numbers?
We say about 100 a night. Mattie alluded to the Romeo pimp, the one who makes you feel good, and the one who, oh, you're beautiful, and sometimes these girls have never heard that, and they give you something to eat. There's a different one. There's a gorilla type pimp, and what he does is these girls are sometimes kidnapped. They're taken to places where they are drugged up, and then the next thing they know, they're in a hotel room servicing maybe 10, 15 men in and out of a room, and these are kids between 11 and 15. The gorilla ones will beat. Some of these girls have been brutally abused, and also their bodies are so damaged because they're so young. Some of them, after they get out of these situations, they can't have children. I mean, you're talking about little girls who are just being raped 10, 15 times a night. And if they don't bring the money back, which they, $500 is supposedly what they're supposed to bring in, that's $50 of jar, or whatever these people are, they're predators too. They're pedophiles, basically. If they don't do that, sometimes they hold one girl up to beat her, so the rest of the girls that he has will understand that you don't step over the line with him. So this is really a travesty. And there are not enough safe homes. We just found out yesterday there's only 10 to 12 safe houses in the United States.
In the United States.
In the United States. That's shocking. Exactly. Shocking. Yeah. 10 to 12.
We have more animal shelters.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is slavery. This is modern day slavery.
That's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
All right. Now, you say 10 in the United States. What shelters do you have here in Oklahoma?
We don't have safe houses.
No.
Dream catchers, and there's maybe 2. There's a safe house, and that's in San Francisco. In San Francisco, run by the Presbyterian, and it's called Safe House. But other than that, for young women, there's an organization called Dream Catchers, but we don't really know exactly how much shelter they have.
It seems like it should be an emergency situation where people donate a house, especially an abandoned house or something, and fix it up for, okay, tell me what's happening here.
Some of these, they're marginalized because they're poor. They have anything to offer. This is millions and millions of dollars that are made off these girls. They're runaways, and a lot of times it's sexism, it's racism, and these girls are caught up in a cycle where they're just used as prey. They're making money off of them, but they don't see the value of these children.
Okay, then tell me about it. Go ahead.
And also, because this entire situation is relatively new in terms of the girls being looked at as victims. prior to a few years ago, they were looked at in a way that they felt that they were cooperative in this. Yeah, just little fast girls, little promiscuous girls. And it hasn't been that long that we have, and I think the country more and more is understanding that these girls are victims, and they are girls. Little girls. And so I hope, we want to have a safe house one day. We want to call it April's house. But that's our dream, you know. How we're going to get there, we don't know. We do believe that the Lord himself will open that door. And maybe we can find people who have just been waiting to help. Because there are good people in the world. You know, we have, unfortunately, these girls have encountered people who are exploit them. But there are people who care just as passionately about them as we do. So,
well, you know, we've talked about the girls. What about the pimps? What are the consequences? What is law enforcement doing?
Just like Mattie was saying, just recently, they have started to see this as a crime. These girls were being arrested, and there was nowhere to put them but juvenile hall. These children are victims. They're rape victims. We think of, they call them C-sex, commercially sexually exploited children. When we think of the ones who they bring over on boats, well, we think of them as victims. But we don't see our little girls on the streets of East Oakland, maybe because we see them with the short skirt on, or we put this in our heads that these are prostitutes, these are children. We have a different connotation about the women in America doing this, as well as somebody being snatched from another country. Because we think if they come over on boats and this is, you know, such a travesty. Law enforcement just now is starting to understand that these kids are victims too, instead of criminals. We saw a film, and they have a John class, where the men who buy children, they had to go to class and they got arrested. One of the questions they asked was, when is the break? The district attorney woman was explaining that these are children, and they wanted to know when the break was. They have no consequences. So this is really sad. I think there was
a law passed, I think maybe a year or so ago, for the city of Oakland, that Johns now have to pay $25,000. There was a $5,000 fine. So, I mean, I don't know how well that's really working.
Because the judges have to enforce it.
Yeah.
But if Dr. So-and-so and lawyer so-and-so is coming up before him, and this little girl is homeless and has nothing, they're usually going to side with the person with the money.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we have to share this story. This happened this year. Sheila and I'm not going to call any names, but we were called to go to San Leandro, where two teenagers had been, I don't want to say arrested, but they had been picked up. And there were a couple of officers there.
You mean for prostitution?
For prostitution. And I have to really applaud the officers, because I don't know if they have training in San Leandro or not, but what we did experience were these two caring officers who treated these young girls like they were human beings, and they treated them like they could have been their daughters. They were kind. They were sensitive to them as young girls who were caught up into something because they had been brought from another city, and then one of them had been beat up. And fortunately, they called someone who in turn called us so that they could be treated kindly. And we just applaud those officers who seem to have understood that these were kids.
Do you not see that, the same behavior with police officers in Oakland?
They're starting to become more sensitive.
Okay. And how many people, you said there are 100 girls out there. So what is the solution to this?
That's a big question.
Safe house, and probably a lot of rehabilitation. Huge question. Some of them are so hooked on drugs because of this situation they're in. So there has to be services. There has to be safe houses. Remember, 17 pimps who were picked up, in Las Vegas. I think it's good reason. Remember that tweet they had? It was about a month or so ago. 17.
All right, so people are moving ahead and finding it as intolerable as we do. That this should be going on in this country. It's a form of slavery.
Yes, it is.
And child abuse.
Yes.
There's domestic violence and
pedophilia.
You name it. Yeah. $25,000 doesn't sound like enough. Do they lock these guys up? No. How are they getting away with it?
Like I said, a lot of them are professional. So, if the judge made
professional,
like doctors, attorneys, business, just had probably Congress people, who knows? Just someone with a professional suit on, and these girls are just, unfortunately, society thinks of them as just go away.
And I think that's a major piece of it. Is how we value or devalue people based on their position. Or based on where they live, that kind of thing. And so when these girls, many of them are Black or Latino, and really there's a high Asian population as well. And they're white, they're all races, but depending upon where they're from, a lot of times they simply are not valued as being a little girl. You know, it's just being a little, and developmentally they're all little girls regardless of what their color is or anything. So I think that that's a major piece because unfortunately that's the world that we live in. That is the world we live in, and we tend to be more position oriented than person oriented and caring about the person, the little person, and our kids.
They should be top priority, and
they're
not.
And we can look at education. We can look at what is happening literally right now in this country, how things are being their kids are being defunded, food stamps. And so it's just that I think that it's the overall picture and understanding and lack of understanding of children.
Who would you say is responsible for what is going on with these children that are being sexually trafficked?
For sure, it's not the children.
No.
It is always the adult. Absolutely always the adult. A child is just that, a child. They're not adults. They don't really make the decision. They are lured, they are coerced, whether it's they trust adults, whatever. They're looking for someone to take care of them. They're children. And so, regardless as to whatever the standing of the perpetrator is, when a child comes along and they think someone cares about them or they're afraid to say anything. I mean, we can say, well, maybe the parents should have. I mean, there are good parents and there are parents who are not so good. But regardless, here's this child. It's not just parents who are not so good where kids get caught up. It's sometimes it's wonderful parents, So we can't, I don't really blame parents, I don't. Unless there's a very, very clear, it's very, very clear that they are neglectful and that kind of thing. But it happens to all people in all areas.
One of the things that I've noticed, and see if you've seen this too, that any child that has been hit, struck, beaten at home, it seems to mess up their head.
Yes.
And a lot of these children run away eventually because they've had enough. And of course, that is the parents' responsibility.
Yes.
And when you see abuse in the home, and child abuse is a huge problem.
Yes, it is.
And you see children being molested with somebody in their family.
Yes.
It might not be the father, it could be the uncle, it could be the brother.
Friends of the family.
And these little girls, or boys,
Mm-hmm.
are
Yes,
trying
they're boys
to
too.
escape this, and of course they get into an even worse situation because they think that adults are trustworthy. And unfortunately, they get caught up in this sex trafficking and ask you, okay, so what happens when they take these children and put them in juvenile hall? How long do they stay there? And then what happens to them when they come out? Do they go back to the pimp? Somebody takes them in?
Sometimes they'll contact the parent, and if the parent maybe is able to deal with the child, then they can go back home, but it just depends. They might have to go to these foster care or group homes. So that in itself could be a hit or miss, where it's going to be a good foster home, a good group home, or it's not. So they're pretty much incarcerating them for maybe a little while, maybe a week or so.
Do they get any counseling?
It's probably so overpopulated, I would doubt. I don't know. They probably do have some type of program in place, but how much they get, I'm not sure. But it is just so overpopulated in these juvenile halls, so they're putting them in foster care, they're putting them in group homes, and sometimes it's just cesspools they're raising each other. So they're kind of helping each other do more and more of this.
They like prison systems today,
Exactly.
where the guys are learning how to be better criminals.
Right, that's true. And then some of these young girls are pimping the other ones who are a little more innocent and stuff. So it just is a whole vicious cycle. But it behooves the community of people who have a heart for these girls to figure out ways to get some type of place, some type of safe house, and boys too. We won't just say it's majority girls, but there are some boys too who are being violated in this way. So,
and I think you asked earlier about what can we do. I think it's one simple thing is if you see it, say something. Don't drive by and ignore it. Dr. Melissa Farley talked about women in Minnesota who were victims of sex trafficking. And one of the things that was said about the girls was that women, mother figures, drove by 12-year-old girls at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were wounded. They were hurt because they never said anything. They wanted them to stop and wanted someone to stop and say, why are you out here? Do you need a ride home? Are you okay? And so it can be as simple as just saying, are you okay? Do you need some help? We don't know what the response will be, but at the minimally, we can just
it's an act of kindness. It's not ignoring them.
It's not ignoring them.
right, like they don't exist.
I think because sometimes if we may be afraid, and the reality is that the girl could get in trouble, her perpetrator or victimizer is nearby and watching and sees that she's saying something to someone passing by. Minimally then, if you're afraid that might be the situation, why can't you just call? Report it. I see this young girl. I'm not sure what the situation is, or it seems very clear to me that she is being trafficked. And do you have a safe place where you can pick her up and take her? And if you see something that looks like someone following her, I would say that too. But I think the whole fear factor is one thing that perpetrators depend on.
Oh, I think in all things. It's one of the reasons why we are promoting Adopt-A-Blog, is to get people in touch with each other, so that they know what's happening in their neighborhood. Because a lot of people are frightened just by burglary, or they're frightened by maybe one gang member that lives on the corner. So they back off lock up and sit behind television
That's
and
right.
say, ain't it awful?
Exactly.
And you're going, yeah, but you're doing exactly the wrong thing. You
Right.
need to come out and
Right.
connect with those neighbors so you know what's happening and so that you do speak up.
That's right.
And Mattie and I, for the last 2 years, we have been canvassing International Boulevard. So that's what we do.
Okay.
And that's how we get women for our fellowship every third Saturday. We go out and meet these ladies, and by the grace of God, nothing has happened to us. Nothing. No attacking, no problems. We've met little girls, and we know when they are feeling a little bit stressed, they'll keep walking. But we've had some amazing young women who have spoken to us, and they come to our third Saturday meeting. So I have to
Are
say,
they able to get away enough to come to your meeting?
sometimes somebody might bring them another older woman. So we've had that happen.
We even had perpetrators, we're pretty sure, when we're passing out our flyers, and we say it's for women, females only, and they've asked for us, or the young woman will look at the perpetrator to make sure it's okay, because of the services that we're offering. We're offering food, we're offering clothes, we're offering toiletries and that kind of thing. They'll say, oh, good, yeah, we can take that.
Okay. And because they know that we're a Christian-based organization, maybe the fear factor for them is kind of taken away. But our basic and ultimate goal is to help these girls get back to a better place in life.
Have you seen some successes?
Yeah.
Worldwide, this is a $43 billion business, and children are paying a terrible price for the fact that they have been abused and ignored, and a lot of children, nobody notices them, but they're there. We want you to take a look at your own community and see if this is going on where you live. And if it is, we're going to be giving you some numbers at the end, because every city has reported that some sex trafficking is going on.